This is the Dope Farm Podcast. Welcome back to another episode of the Dope Farm Podcast. This is Win, and I'm your host. First of all, I want to start out by saying thank you to John Jeffers over at the Contrary Radio Network for poking, prodding, and persuading me to upload my recent podcasts to his network and sharing them there. It took a little deciding to do, but I just went ahead and did it. He was very persuasive. So thank you, John. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your network alongside yourself with the Jeffers Brief, Mark Boyle, Don Lowry, and their shows, as well as, which I'm really excited because I'm a big fan of Glenn Tate and Shelby Gallagher and their podcast, Prepping 2.0. It's really great to have this opportunity to be able to join in with them. There was a little static there. I apologize. My ham radio just keyed up, and so it get a little static there. I do apologize. So anyhow, what we're going to do, I'm going to start a thing that I was listening to a podcast called Over the Peak, and they just up and quit. They did one episode, or they did, I forget what number they were on, but they just came on and did like a 5-minute episode and said, hey, this is the last one. And I was very disappointed because I really enjoyed that podcast. But anyway, they were doing George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior. And so, since they're not doing it anymore, I'm going to kind of pick up where they left off, but I'm going to start back at 0, or at 1 rather. I'm reading here from the foundationsmag.com, and they have a write-up here, and it says, by the age of 16, Washington had copied out by hand 110 rules of civility and decent behavior in company and conversation. They are based on a set of rules composed by French Jesuits in 1595. Presumably, they were copied out as part of an exercise in penmanship assigned by young Washington's schoolmaster. The first English translation of the French rules appeared in 1640 and ascribed to Francis Hawkins, the 12-year-old son of a doctor. Today, many, if not all of these rules sound a little fussy, if not downright silly. It would be easy to dismiss them as outdated and appropriate to the time of powdered wigs and quills, but they reflect a focus that is increasingly difficult to find. The rules have in common a focus on another people rather than a narrow focus of our own self-interests that we find prevalent today. Fussy or not, they represent more than just manners. They are small sacrifices that we should all be willing to make for the good of all and the sake of living together. These rules proclaim our respect for others and in turn give us a gift of self-respect and the highest self-esteem. Richard Brookshire, in his book on Washington, wrote that all modern manners in the Western world were originally aristocratic. Courtesy meant behavior appropriate to the court. Chivalry comes from the chevalier, a knight. Yet Washington was to dedicate himself to freeing America from a court's control. Could manners survive the operation? Without realizing it, the Jesuits who wrote them and the young man who copied them were outlining and absorbing a system of courtesy appropriate to equals and near equals. When the company for whom the decent behavior was to be performed expanded to the nation, Washington was ready. Pearson Weems got it right when he wrote that it was no wonder everybody honored him who honored everybody. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start out the podcast with one rule every day or every podcast and build on them. So that should carry me through about 110 episodes. Let's hope we last that long. So the first rule is every action done in company ought to be with some sign of respect to those that are present. And that really speaks volumes of today. In this day and age of cell phones, I'm glued to mine. I'm bad about it, especially around my family. And that's something that I need to work on, which actually starting a podcast hasn't helped much. But when you're in the presence of other people, just look around and, you make eye contact with people and you give a nod, a wave, just don't do things. Don't be rude. If your phone rings, go in the other room. It's just courtesy. It's something that is nearly dead today in our society. So the first rule, man, that speaks volumes. And if we just lived by that rule alone, then, man, we could really make a difference. So respect is something that has really fallen to the wayside in our society today. Next week, we'll cover 2, or the next episode, I'll cover rule number 2. For this week, I want to focus on a write-up I did on my website, thedopefarmpodcast.com, and it was on on a sun oven that my beautiful wife, I actually didn't write it up like this, but my beautiful, wonderful wife purchased for me as a gift several years ago. And I had first heard about the sun oven on the Prepper Recon podcast with Mark Goodwin. And he had Paul Munson on there talking about his sun oven. And they had a pretty good deal going at the time. But, of course, I didn't have the opportunity to get it then. But anyway, I was very impressed with what they were talking about. The ability to cook food with the power of the sun. And that, to me, really struck a chord. I live in eastern North Carolina, and we have plenty of wood, plenty of materials that we can build fires with and things of that nature. But in a grid down situation, you may not want to advertise that you're out cooking. But you could also use it for post-hurricane. We're coming up on hurricane season here in North Carolina, and preparedness on the minds of a lot of people. Was sitting there the other evening, Saturday, and decided to get the sun oven out. It was a beautiful, clear day. We're in a mild drought right this minute here in North Carolina. And I said, man, it's such a sunny day. It's beautiful out. Kids are playing in the backyard on their shark slide. And I just decided, what the heck? Let's grab that thing. It's been sitting up on the shelf in the garage for probably 2 years now. So I got it out and decided, hey, I'm going to try to cook something here. And so what I did, because I'm on a ketogenic diet, I don't eat fruit, vegetables, anything of that nature, grains, just anything with carbs in it, basically. So I had to kind of make a decision as to what I was going to buy, or what I was going to cook, rather. So I got to thinking, man, how about let's just cook some bacon in this sucker? So I got out the racks, got out some parchment paper, and set it up, put out I think I did 8 strips of bacon, and it took a little while to get it going. It takes a little while to get this thing cranked up. Once you get it set up, it goes pretty quick. You set it up, face it towards the sun, and it has these ingenious little aligners. And I mean, they're so simple, it's stupid. They're basically little blocks with holes in them. And in the bottom of the block, there's a dot. And you align the sun with the dot, and it creates a little beam inside the block, and you line it up, and boom, you're basically perfectly aligned. And so I set it out, and initially it showed that the temperature was 100 degrees. I mean, right after it set up, it was about probably in the high 80s, maybe low 90s that day. After about 30 minutes, it was up to 250 degrees. So while I let it continue to preheat, I went into the house and got the bacon and everything set up and ready, and put it on. I left it for about an hour and a half, just didn't even touch it, and went back. And one of the things I've noticed about the sun oven, and I can't really say that it's a flaw, but it is, I don't know, I think it does have some effect on how well it works, is that as the food cooks, and I had this problem back when I was trying to bake cookies and bread, is that moisture will build up on the door. The door is just a square piece of tempered glass. And it's, so basically you have to open it up, wipe it off, close it back real quick so you don't lose all your heat. And what you can also do is there's a little latch at the very top that you can unlatch, and it'll help allow some of the moisture to escape. It won't let the temperature get as high as it possibly could. The temperature range from the website says it could get up to 450 degrees or 400 degrees. Now, in my experience, I've never seen it like that, but I'm not saying that it couldn't. I'm obviously, Mr. Munson has a lot more experience with it than I do. So I have read and watched videos of where people will just set this thing out, put a pan or a pot in it with meat, and just basically point it in a southerly direction and just let it go all day. And I mean, it'll cook fine. I'm a little more picky about it, so I like to, about every 30, 40 minutes, I'll go and check the alignment. It has a kickstand on the back to allow you to be able to get the back up so you can better align it with the sun. And then you just kind of have to turn it, let it follow the sun as it goes around. So after about an hour and a half, we were up to 300 degrees, and the bacon was really, really cooking. Let's see, through my article here, I started at 10:30 and let it heat and cook. I finally ended up taking it off at, saying 12:50. So 2.5 hours, basically. Yeah, about 2.5 hours to get the bacon good and crispy. I did make a mistake in just putting the parchment paper. I didn't put the bacon down into anything. And so, of course, all that grease dripped down into the bottom of the box that holds it. So that's just a, lesson learned, and that's why we practice. Now, I'm really happy with how this device works. It's kind of bulky. It's big. It's not something that you're going to carry. It's not meant for, if you're on foot, that you're going to have to hump to get out of Dodge. It is meant for something that maybe pre-stage at a bug out location or have at your home as if you're going to bug in. And the majority of people are going to have to bug in because most people don't have a bug out location. So from their website, they